The remaining chapters of the book of 2 Chronicles, from chapter 10, tell of the steady decline of the nation of Israel and of Judah in particular, leading to the devastation of the city of Jerusalem, from its high point, where the nations of the world came up to learn the ways of God, to the low point when they came to plunder it and to absolutely destroy it and to destroy the temple. And the lesson that we will learn is that when the people sought the Lord was able to bless them. But when they went their own way, then the blessing of the Lord was withdrawn from them. And that applies in our personal lives as well as in our own national life. For it was the spiritual state of the king that strongly influenced the state of the nation. 2 Chronicles chapter 10. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone to Shechem to make him king. So it happened when Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard it, he was in Egypt, where he had fled from the presence of King Solomon, that Jeroboam returned from Egypt. Then they sent for him and called him. And Jeroboam and all Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, Your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the burdensome service of your father and his heavy yoke which he put on us, and we will serve you. So he said to them, Come back to me after 3 days. And the people departed. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who stood before his father Solomon, while he still lived, saying, How do you advise me to answer these people? And they spoke to him, saying, If you are kind to these people, and please them, and speak good words to them, they will be your servants forever. But he rejected the advice which the elders had given him, and consulted the young men who had grown up with him, who stood before him. And he said to them, What advice do you give? How should we answer this people who have spoken to me, saying, Lighten the yoke which your father put on us? Then the young men who had grown up with him spoke to him, saying, Thus you should speak to the people who have spoken to you, saying, Your father made our yoke heavy, but you make it lighter on us. Thus you shall say to them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's waist. And now, whereas my father put a heavy yoke on you, I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam on the 3rd day, as the king had directed, saying, Come back to me the 3rd day. Then the king answered them roughly. King Rehoboam rejected the advice of the elders, and he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to it. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges. So the king did not listen to the people, for the turn of events was from God, that the Lord might fulfill his word, which he had spoken by the hand of Ahijah the Shilonite, to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Now when all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, saying, What share have we in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to your tents, O Israel. Now see to your own house, O David. So all Israel departed to their tents. But Rehoboam reigned over the children of Israel, who dwelt in the cities of Judah. Then Rehoboam sent Hadoram, who was in charge of revenue. But the children of Israel stoned him with stones, and he died. Then King Rehoboam mounted his chariot in haste to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we consider the dramatic change of events that occurred when Solomon died. Rehoboam was 40 years old when he became king. All he had known was the glory of his father's kingdom. And while he had no doubt the opportunity of learning his father's wisdom, but obviously he had not learned it. He had not appreciated the God of heaven. The only reference to God in this chapter that we've read is the fact that the Lord orchestrated this splitting up of the kingdom, and it was a judgment, first of all on Solomon, although the chronicler didn't describe it because he was presenting the glory of the kingdom as a picture of the future kingdom of the Lord Jesus Christ. Yet in Kings, we learned that Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. These were primarily princesses from other countries who came to live in Jerusalem as a kind of peace treaty, but who brought with them their pagan gods. Solomon built temples for these pagan gods, and eventually he went with his wives into the temples of the pagan gods to worship the pagan gods, who are no gods at all. And so the Lord had raised up this Jeroboam, who was a very efficient and senior public servant for Solomon, and promised to give him 10 tribes. When Solomon heard about this, rather than repenting before the Lord, he sought to have Jeroboam killed. So Jeroboam had fled to Egypt and waited for the day when Solomon died. And then he came back, and he was the lead spokesman on behalf of the 10 tribes, as Rehoboam sought to establish himself as the new king over the people. They all came together at Shechem to recognize him as the new king. But their terms were that he would lighten the taxes, lighten the service load. Solomon had been very great because he had organized the whole nation. Everyone was busy. And I guess people were getting a little bit tired of all this work that they were doing, making the nation great. And they said, lighten the load. They weren't saying we're not going to work at all. They were requesting a lighter load. And the elders who understood the people and had learned from Solomon said, indeed, listen to them. If you go along with what they request today, then they will remain with you. But Rehoboam listened instead to the young men who'd grown up with him. We have a reference here, my little finger shall be thicker than my father's waist. It suggests to me that Solomon had put on weight with the good life that he had lived, which might be why he only lived to 60, whereas his father had lived to 70. For there's always the tendency for us to indulge more than we should. Obesity is a huge problem in our modern Western society because we indulge too much. We have too much of the good thing. Solomon thought that he could impose his will. His father had chastised those who were wicked with whips, but he was going to be more brutal in that process. This is what he proposed to the people. Rather than earn their cooperation by being a good king, he thought he could bully them into doing what he wanted. Solomon, and indeed the Lord Jesus, saw themselves as servants of the people, but rulers often see themselves as ones to be served. Rehoboam the king didn't listen, take heed to the message of the people, and so the people walked out on him. And when he sent his chief tax collector to collect the taxes, they stoned him with stones. And Rehoboam then knew that Israel was in rebellion. The 10 tribes were in rebellion against the house of David. He fled to Jerusalem for safety himself. So much for all his boasting. The kingdom was very powerful, but the way Solomon had set it up, the chariot cities were distributed across the whole territory. And so, militarily, the 10 tribes had the same strength and expertise as Rehoboam. So he didn't have control. His bullying backfired.